You are listening to Leaders and Legends, a podcast featuring some of Indiana's most fascinating men and women whose impact has shaped our state, our communities, and us. Join us as we discuss their imprint on our history. Leaders and Legends is brought to you by Veteran Strategies Incorporated, your local veteran business enterprise specializing in public relations, media relations, public outreach, crisis communications, and digital photography. My name is Robert Bain, Principal of Veteran Strategies, former Deputy Chief of Staff to Mayor Greg Ballard, and Communications Director for the Indiana Republican Party. I'm honored to be your host for our discussion. Mayor Greg Ballard has graced us with his presence. I can't believe it. It's our very first podcast. There's nobody I'd want to talk to more to get everything started than the mayor. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Great to be here, Robert. I appreciate it. Being here first.
Well, working for you changed my life, and I wouldn't be doing this podcast or have my own little PR company if it wasn't for you. So I wanted to talk to you first to say thank you. Not only for everything that you've done for me and for so many others of us who are out there at the city as a whole, but I want to ask lots of questions about what you're doing now and then talk a lot about what you accomplished as mayor and kind of how you got there. So whenever you're ready.
Well, I appreciate it. You can say what you want about me, but I would suggest to you that you and one other young lady really helped me out during the transition and really put that on rock steady ground. So, and you came at a very crucial time within a couple of days after that election when we were trying to figure out what was going on. But I think we had it in hand. But you, with your ability to handle everything that was coming in on the communication side, and Jennifer Piercy,
God love her,
was a master organizer and really helped out in that regard. And the two of you really put us on great firm ground.
Well, I appreciate that. It was it was one of those experiences as someone who was running the elections for Marion County in 2003 when Bart Peterson won by 28 percentage points, beat Greg Jordan, who was a terrifically respected, great guy, was Marion County treasurer at the time. I really thought there'd be Democrat mayors for decades in a row. I really did. And was somewhat envious of a lot of I had some friends up there, really good people, actually. Steve Campbell, Justin Oldmiller, Michael Connor.
Good folks.
I mean, the list goes on and on. Peterson really did have a terrific staff. And I thought, man, what it would be like to work up there, but I'll never know. And let's start right there. It's 2007. It's November, and it's election day. Did you wake up thinking that you would be the next mayor of Indianapolis?
I did, because I actually thought that the last 2 weeks. I was I was confident. I didn't have any money, as you may recall. And there was a whole thing going on there that we can get into if you want to, but I was able to spend very little cash. Probably 2/3 of the cash that I actually did get, maybe $200,000 overall, really came in the last couple of weeks when people figured out something was up. But I had a lot of people telling me things. I had a lot of Democrats whispering in my ear certain things, and that's why I knew something was up. And I actually told somebody who became really a close friend and who became really a good partner with us in the city. I won't mention his name, but I told him, "You're going to be the first phone call I make after the election." I told him that 4 days before the election, and that was. And I did. He was the first phone call that I made. And I was pretty confident going into it. The rest of the city wasn't so confident, but I was pretty confident.
Well, I didn't think you had a chance in hell, quite frankly.
I think that was the general notion.
And I remember coming up to you. First time I met you was at Republican headquarters. And I had a jacket on, which
State
was
headquarters, right?
County.
Okay.
County, because I was talking to Kyle Walker, who's a political genius, along with Tom John, Tom John's knowledge of this county when it comes to politics is amazing. Right up there with Jennifer Hollowell and, quite frankly, guys like Joel Miller and Ned Tracy and others, but on the other side. But anyway, and I had my Meritorious Service Medal lapel pin on from the military, and you knew exactly what it was, and it was the first time I'd met you. And I just said, if you need anything from me, Robert Vane, I work at State Party. This is what I do. I don't know what kind of staff you have. And you looked at me like, dude, you haven't been paying attention because I have no staff. But let me know how I can be helpful. And I think I wrote a couple of speeches for you and did like a debate prep. and you were always very kind. And I candidly never thought you had a chance until that same time frame that you discussed. I had a conversation with Kyle Walker, and I'm like, what's it like? What's it going to be like? So on and so forth. What's your prediction? And I remember Kyle, who was executive director of the Marion County Republican Party at the time, and Tom John was chairman. He goes, man, I think this dude's going to win. And he'd been telling me for a while he thought the council was going to flip. Right. And I was like, you cannot be serious. Like, really? And Peterson went negative on you, and we don't want to, belabor that point, but
other than the fact that told everybody else,
that's exactly right.
Something's up, because no one goes negative unless they're in trouble.
That's exactly right. And so I remember being that day, just getting that feeling. So you woke up thinking you were going to win. What was that day like as it went into the night and the victory, what became a victory celebration at the Mural?
Yeah, it's hard to overestimate the feeling of that celebration, frankly. But getting up that day, I was actually pretty confident at that point in time, but I was anxious. It still has to execute, right? And it was a very, very, very cold day. I don't know if you remember that or not, but I remember it very well. My brother, who looks like me, was out working the polls outside, as with me. He said 4 people came up to him that day and hugged him and said, "I want to hug the next mayor of Indianapolis." They thought yeah, he was me. But I was frankly I was relieved when I went into the county headquarters and I saw Doris Ann Sadler there, because she had been the clerk. Mm-hmm. She knew exactly what was going on. She was going to make sure that everything was going to be executed appropriately across the county as the votes came in. That made me feel really, really good and really solid. And also told me that the party thinks this might happen also. So we started preparing for that at that point in time. But I was pretty confident in the last couple of weeks that things were going to happen, even though I had no money to poll. But the feeling that I was getting from both Republicans and Democrats in the city was that this was going to happen.
And slating was 10 months before. It's January or February or whatever it was. I think it was maybe January of 2007. What made you decide to care enough? I mean, in an era where everyone on Twitter is, both Pope and Playmate of the Month, right? I mean, they're experts on everything. And Facebook, a lot of people have something to say. That's a big difference than being willing to do something. What made you decide, 23 years in the Marine Corps, you had a nice little life going, wonderful wife, beautiful kids. I mean, this isn't an easy decision. What made you go, you know what, I'm willing?
Well, there's a bit of a story here. It'll take a couple minutes, but I had a couple of people ask me to run for mayor, and I said, "Are you sure?" Nobody who's really, one person was kind of connected to the party, the other one not at all. He said, "You have the skill set that you should be the mayor of Indianapolis. And by the way, no one's running on the Republican side, so maybe you need to look at this thing." And I said, so I did, actually. I wasn't planning on being the mayor, but never entered my mind until they had talked to me, which was either late 06 or early 07. I'm not sure which it was. And so I called up the county chairman at the time, and I said, which was not Tom John at the time. Mm-mm. I called him up and I said, "Listen, I'm being told I should run for mayor. What do you think?" He goes, I remember exactly where I was. I left a message. He calls me back on Friday, the day before the original slating. And I was at the golf show at the convention center. And he called me back. I said, "Should I go tomorrow?" He says, "Sure." He said, "We're not going to slate the mayor tomorrow. We're going to slate the councilors in every other office, but we're not going to slate the mayor because we don't really know who's going to be the candidate."
Right.
But he said, "Come on in." And I said, "Should I bring anything?" He said, "Sure, bring a little one-pager about yourself." So that night, about 11:30, I typed something out about myself, a little one-pager, made 700 copies. And the next morning, me and another guy put them on all the chairs before anybody got there. It's, again, another freezing cold day. But we got there maybe an hour before everybody else did and put 700 pieces of paper on chairs. And then I spent the day at the slating convention, saw how all that was done, because I didn't know anything about it. And some people were nice. 2/3 of the people were nice to me. Others are a little dismissive, a little arrogant.
And that's how they treat people. If you're not someone in politics, they give you the little bit of.
Yeah, one guy came up to me and said, "This is how you shake a hand." Now you have to understand, I'm over 50 years old and been a Marine for 23 of that, and the guy comes in, "This is how you shake a hand." I thought,
You want to dine
All
him
right.
out? Who
Yeah.
was it?
No, I won't. You'll know the name. You would know him though. And but so I mean, so that was a little odd, but I looked at it and so. Like I say, people were nice, but they weren't going to select the mayor. And as it turned out, the party, who was selected was the new county chairman, became Tom John, and he had somebody else in mind to run for mayor. It was not me because nobody knew who I was anyway. I wasn't involved in anything in any level. And but as it turned out, that gentleman did not turn out to be the guy. And then I was kind of the default candidate. All the other 5 or 6 people that were thinking about it were really not going to be the guy. And so it kind of fell to me, even though, I mean, there's a whole story there too, but it kind of fell to me to do this. So they held a slating convention. I won that slating convention. If you, so again, some
Was
of those.
it at the state fairgrounds?
No.
Was
It was at the Ben Davis Fire Site, Fire Center out there on the west side. And, again, that was some comedy associated with that, and like you can't imagine how all this stuff happens, right? But and that's when I became the candidate. But it's funny, I tell you about the gentleman that they did want to be the candidate. We had a Wednesday night meeting
because his big deal was money. He had money. He
was going to bring his own money.
That's right.
I was a Marine and 2 kids in college. That wasn't me, right? I wasn't going to bring the money. But I remember specifically there was a Wednesday night meeting. Friday was the day that at the clerk's office you had to be in or out. I was already in. I had registered long before. And so we had a meeting Wednesday night. I had to teach a class. So I had one of those 2 guys that I mentioned earlier. I had him go to that meeting for me. I got back from teaching my class. I called him up like at 8:15, said, how'd the meeting go? He goes, it's still going on. I said, should I come down? He said, sure, come on down. So I went down. I realized, wow, I could read a room pretty well. Mm-hmm. I realized at that point in time, I'm the number 2 guy here, and I don't know anything or anybody, but I'm the number 2 guy here. And but it was clear that Tom John, the new county chair, wanted this guy, and I said, I'm a team player. I get this completely. I'll help out where I can, or whatever you want me to do. And they asked me to withdraw, and I said, sure, I'll withdraw. They want to be a team.
Right.
Well, the next day, Thursday, an article comes out in the Star and says something, and I get a phone call in the afternoon, excuse me, and said, are you going to drop out, Greg? I said, yes, sure, I told you I would. She goes, okay, that's great, I appreciate that. And then 2 hours later, I got another phone call that said, are you still going to drop out? I said, I told you I would. Yeah, sure. He goes, well, we'd like you to stay in. We'd like you to stay in. So I went to the, something told me to go to the Indy Star website. And I went to the Indy Star website, and sure enough, there was a column there from the late, great Matt Tully. Mm-hmm. And if Matt puts that column out on Saturday or Sunday, I would have withdrawn on Friday, and you wouldn't be talking to me today, because there's no way the party was going to select me with the methods at that time, because nobody knew who I was. I wasn't involved with the party whatsoever. But because I was the one kind of left standing on that Friday, they asked me not to withdraw. But I was going to withdraw that Friday, and if that column comes out on Saturday, Sunday, or the next Monday or something, I will have withdrawn, and I'm just going with my life, and nobody knows who I am, because I would have been out of it. Isn't that interesting how all this happens?
No, and Lord knows we've spent thousands of hours together. I'd never heard that part of the story. Another question about 2007 real quick. Was there a time where you were like, what did I do this for? I can't win this guy.
No.
He's got all this money, and
Just the opposite.
You never got down on yourself for running. Why'd I put my wife through this? And why got asked?
Well, you think about those things, but no, I never got down on myself. It was actually just the opposite. I realized I was never going to be in this position again for the rest of my life, and I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can to do this. That's what I told myself, and I told myself that every day. Not, why am I doing this? It was just the opposite. I'm never going to be here again. I'm going to work my tail off to make sure this executes.
Before we move on to your time as mayor, I'll give you 3 facts or 3 things, and you put them what you think's order of importance to you winning, cruciality. Taxes, crime, Marine Corps.
Ooh, you threw me off of that last one. As far as an issue, there's no question it was taxes. No, I don't think there's much question about that. But I would tell you that the Marine Corps was probably more important. People always ask me what did the Marine Corps give you as far as being the mayor, and it gives you lots of things. Obviously, I've been leading people since I was 23 years old, so I kind of had that down. I like to think I did. Different level of leadership, obviously, that I was about to get into, but I certainly had the basics of leadership down. So, but that was not the main thing. The main thing for me was focus. You get distracted a lot when you go to war, when you go into different contingency situations, and you have to realize, what are we trying to do here? Where are we going? What are we trying to do? And so being the mayor, running for mayor, there's a lot of distractions, and there are people always trying to throw you off your game. And what it really did for me more than anything else was focus. It allowed, I would hear this stuff, but I stayed focused on what I was trying to do.
Do you believe it helped you, however, help magnify and solidify, for example, your crime message, public safety's job one, that as a 23-year officer in the Marine Corps, there's an inherent tough, the Marine Corps, I was in the Army, so I hate saying this, but the Marine Corps, honestly, probably next to Long's Bakery, has the best brand in the world. Like, when you say you're in
Long's
the Marine...
is pretty tough, though. Those are really good.
But when you say you're in the Marine Corps, people just, they look at you differently. They just do. And so, but saying you're tough on crime as a Marine officer has a different connotation than saying you're going to be tough on crime and you were in the Coast Guard. So in that sense, do you feel that people believed that message of your campaign because he's a Marine, he's going to do what he says? He's a tough guy.
Yeah, I do think so. I'm really a softy at heart, as you well know, Robert. But I think I'm tough in being focused and tough in being, this is where we're going to go, tough in the mental aspect of all of this. I think I am still that way. So yeah, I do think it has some impact. Very patriotic town, very patriotic people in the city. People trust those who have served. It didn't hurt to have a great family and have a great wife and kids who were down at IU and all that. I think all that was that helped also. But yeah, I do think that helped, and I like the fact that now that I'm on a podcast and I can say this, you can go back 30 years and look at the murder rate, right? People think it just went up in the last few years. No, go back a little further than me.
Exactly.
And you'll see that there's a U there. And at the bottom of that U is 4 years in a row of under 100 murders that we were able to execute. And it did rise up a little bit when I was at the end. And I think the current mayor has a little bit of he's got a tough road to go with the opioids and things like that are out there. And but go back and look, and we brought it down rather dramatically for a 4-year period. We really did.
At what point, when you became mayor, the metaphor, or however you want to say it, is catching the tiger by the tail, right? So what issue or what time frame did something happen that knocked you on your heels, especially the first maybe year and a half, where you're just, it's reasonable to think that you're learning the position and learning the city better, and it's complex as heck. There's a saying that the toughest job in the United States is the mayor of New York City. They don't say that just to make it up, but can you think of a time or an issue or something that was like, okay, this is tough. This is something I didn't anticipate.
Tough might not be the right word. I would tell you, my first chief of staff, Paul Okeson, who's an unbelievable guy.
The best.
He was. I love him. This is the way I describe him, and I've told him this too. He's the only guy who you can go and talk to him, and he'll tell you no, but you love him more afterwards than before. He has that skill set.
As you said before, he was the perfect first chief of staff.
No question, for a guy who.
And you had 4 pretty darn good ones.
I had 4 great ones, and but to get the first one there that way, who could tell me straight to my face. I did not surround myself with yes men and yes ladies, as you well know. I had lots of people telling me, and you were one of them. But I remember one time telling Paul that, with the press, I said, well, let's do this. Just don't worry about it over here. We'll just do this. And he looks at me and goes, Mayor, that's 100% wrong.
I remember when I came to the administration, my first day was November 10th. And the next day was Veterans Day parade. It was also the day they cut the ribbon on the new airport. And it was the first staff meeting I was in. And I said, okay, what are you going out there? You got a speech or whatever? And you said, no, I'm not going. I'm going to the Veterans Parade. I'm like, you're not going to go to the cutting of the ribbon of $1 billion airport or however much it costs. And you're like, no, I'm not going to miss the Veterans Parade. Scott Newman was right behind me and he goes, this is why you're here. And you ended up going. You gave a great speech that the incomparable Jen Pittman wrote for you.
She was terrific.
And let me ask another question on the same lines about the administration, because there's a few things I want to talk about your post-mayoral life. If you had to list your top 3 accomplishments, would bringing the Super Bowl to the city be one of them?
No, I don't think so. I don't.
I knew the answer to that question.
Just so funny that you would ask that question, because I've got a whole list of stuff here. No, actually, there's lots of things.
It's a terrific accomplishment. I mean, something that some of us who grew up in Indianapolis could never have fathomed that a Super Bowl would come here. So we're not downplaying it, but I know that you've always been kind of humble about it. Like, it was an amazingly terrific event, showcased the city, but is that really more important than being the first mayor's administration to make phone calls back to citizens from the Mayor's
Action Center? Boy, that was fun too, by the way. No, actually, the Super Bowl was great. Don't get me wrong. And I think a lot of people saw their city differently as a result of that, which I really very, very much appreciate. But as I told a lot of people at the time, that Super Bowl was not the culmination of anything. It was just evidence that we were doing the right things all along. We, the sports corp and the business and the nonprofit
and past administrations,
yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we executed it well, which is what we expected to do. So it was great. It was those 10 days were unbelievable. But no, I wouldn't put that in the top 3. You want me to say the top 3?
I think you should give us 2.
So because there's so many. I think actually most of them don't. The stuff that was really critically important never got any press.
Well, because you ran on that in 2007, back to basics, had enough. Let's get the basics of government right. Especially since we're the city, we're closer to the people than, the state or the State Department or whatever. So if we can get this stuff right.
Well, I think there's 3 things, 2 tangible, 1 not tangible, but is executing out right now. Actually, all of them still are, but the sewer work that we did when we inherited a $1.8 billion job, which the EPA mandated on the previous administration. I know because I eventually became the chair of the Water Council for the Conference of Mayors. I know exactly what they were doing, and they did to Indianapolis what they did to pretty much every other city in America. When we got in, we told the EPA that we understand what you're trying to do, but here's this plan we reworked, and we're going to do it for $1 billion, and it'll be bigger, it'll be faster, it'll be cheaper, and it will be greener. It'll be all of those things. And the EPA said, we don't care, spend this amount of money. That's what they did. And that's when I found out that they were asking cities to spend 2% of their median household income, not to actually fix the problem in their city. They wanted a certain percentage. They'll deny that, but that's actually what was happening. And we went to court. Well, we were about to go to court. We were dancing for about a year. And then when we were about ready to go to court, the EPA came out and said, Indianapolis, you're right. You're right. We had to go to the national level because this is the regional level who was doing this to us.
Sure.
So at the national level, they understood it. And they had the Department of Justice with them too. I mean, this was not just the EPA. This is the EPA and the Department of Justice who are leaning on all the cities across the nation. And we pushed back. And we saved our ratepayers over $800 million right off the bat. And never got a word in the press. Nobody saw it. Only Rafael Sanchez of Channel 6 ever did an article about it. And I mean, it was never in the paper. No one ever said it. But that was the biggest engineering project, and it was the biggest environmental project the city has ever done. It's still playing out right now, and by 2025, the White River will be as clean as it's ever been in forever as a result of what we did. And that was an amazing project that we did, but frankly, nobody knows about it because, as Raphael told me, infrastructure isn't sexy. So,
well, it's not. And then, I get that point.
And then we obviously put the water and wastewater into Citizens Energy, who continues to execute that plan. So that was an amazing event in the city that will pay dividends for 50 to 100 years. And we got no press out of it, but it was a huge, huge thing that we did in the city.
Can I note for the record that I wasn't doing his media at that time?
So the next thing is, I think the fiscal. I inherited the mayor's office during recessionary times, and I remember David Reynolds, my first controller. He was a wonderful guy, just brilliant guy, really is. And I remember him telling me in 08 or 09, I can't remember. He says, "Don't worry, Mayor. In about 11, 12, it's all going to start to turn, and we're starting to have an uptick in revenues." Well, that never happened when I was the mayor. But that said, I think we steadied things, and we paid down the debt. We went from about $330 million in debt to about $110 million during a recession, and kept the ratings up, increased them one time, and so that was important to keep the borrowing costs down, obviously. But we paid down the debt. We kind of we got the house in order a little bit better, even during a recessionary time, and I think that was a big deal. And when we turned over to the current administration, I turned over a ton of cash to those guys. Because I knew they were going to have some trouble too. There was a bit of a structural deficit in there. I don't think it was much as what they said it was, but there was a bit of a structural deficit in there. And I left them a ton of cash to cover to work all through that, and that was part of the deal. I mean, other people wanted me to spend that money.
Right.
I did not spend that money. We put $80 million aside in something we called a fiscal stability fund. Council really wanted to spend that down, and we maneuvered to make sure we didn't. And in addition to the other reserves that I turned over, 78 of that $78 million of that was still in there, plus the other money that I left and frankly that the state owed us. So there was a lot of cash on hand, which I was proud of. I wanted them.
And you talked about that a lot in your first campaign as well.
So we were able to do that. So that's two. So the sewer work, and then I think the fiscal stability that we brought to the city during very, very tough financial times nationally. And the third thing I think is who we had and what are they doing now, right? So the team that I had was incredible. I had a former member, really prominent former member of Lugar's team come up and tell me, "Your team was even better than ours." He told me that twice. I couldn't believe he said that, because that team was a great team.
And Indianapolis has a history of terrific people working in the mayor's office going on to do other things, whether it's Mike O'Connor or Susan Brooks or Ryan Vaughn, Michael Huber, David Harris, Jim Morris, this fellow named Mitch Daniels. I mean,
it's been amazing, and we were able to continue that. And I like to think we created a whole new generation of leadership, because, as you know, most of the people that worked for us were not 60 or 70; they were 30s, some 20s, right?
That's right.
But look where we lead: the Indiana Sports Corp. We lead the Greater Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce, Ascend Indiana, the Workforce Arm, the Mind Trust, the education organization,
Brandon Brown,
Hoosier,
right?
the Hoosier Lottery. The
Veteran Strategies,
but the State Civil Rights Commission. I mean, I can go on and on and on. And we have number 2 person in the IEDC, and all these are great people who continue to do work on behalf of the city and the state. And I mean, you know all those names. I probably shouldn't mention all their names, but Ryan Vine, Chris Cotterill, and Mike Huber,
State Budget Director Jason Dudich,
State Budget Director.
Jim Pittman's doing it. One America is amazing. The list goes on and on.
Yeah.
Mark Lauder, who is out in D.C. doing his thing,
right? And Brandon Brown and Jason Cloth, who was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Just even Adam Tees, what he's doing with IU now is remarkable. We had a team that was really incredible. I was so blessed to have so many of these people around me. I really was.
Well, and it's funny too, because I will tell people, and then we'll talk for a few minutes about your post-mayoral dominance. And I talk to people, and this is going to date this podcast, but Superintendent Louis Farabee has announced he's leaving to go to Washington, D.C., another incredibly effective, amazing leader. And you two are a lot alike. Introverts, don't seek the spotlight. I don't think you ever rolled up your sleeves like these politicians do for these commercials. I remember I couldn't get you on a snow plow for when we rolled out the snow fleet.
You remember the phrase, right?
No lame photo ops.
I wanted no lame photo ops.
What you did with buying all the plows and stuff. I mean, we had plows left over from like Hudnut or Goldsmith. I mean, they were archaic.
The floorboards they're holes. The guys were freezing their tail off because the floorboards had holes in them.
Yeah. So those are the kind of nuts and bolts things that we were talking about earlier. But when it comes to being around the city, I had a conversation with someone who worked for Mayor Goldsmith, and he would talk about being downtown or being wherever in the city, and think about how much he was involved in that. my personal experience in that would probably be the Irvington Charter High School. Remember when I came to you with Krieger Roush and said they're closing the Guardians home? This is typical Greg Ballard, right? They're closing the Guardians home in Irvington. You can't do that to Irvington. And without even looking up, you said, well, then do something about it. I was like, okay. I walked right to Krieger and like, we got to do something with that building. And I grew up right across the street, so that's particularly special to me. But when you're driving around, walking around, biking around, or whatever, what are the one or two things before we move on that you look and go, man, I'm really glad to say that I was mayor and I helped nudge that along?
What I would call connectivity. You heard that phrase. I'm not sure anybody ever heard that phrase on the 25th floor before, but connectivity. The combination of the sidewalks and the bike lanes and the trails and the cultural trail and all of the things connecting up, allowing people to go from point A to point B, not necessarily by a car or by any other means, but the ability, what I call mobility options, I think it was greatly enhanced during our administration. And that's a talent attractor, right? A lot of people are asking me, why are you doing this? Oh my God, I can't believe it. But that's part of creating the kind of city that people want to live in. It's a talent attractor, and that's why you had to do it. So it wasn't because I liked to ride bikes. It was because we have to create that kind of city. So I think
your kids influenced you on that.
Yeah, my kids influenced me on
because they were the generation.
City, right?
They were highly educated, go-getters. They're the kind of kids you want. I mean, they're the kind of people you want to live in this city. That's how they keep the city going and vibrant and all that sort of thing.
Another thing that happened, I'm not so sure I had much to do with it, but other than kind of creating the conditions, this is a real foodie city right now. We have great restaurants. We have an amazing collection of chefs that have opened up restaurants. We didn't necessarily, that was not always purposeful. A couple of it was, but frankly, that grew organically because I think we created the city that allowed that to happen. So I think when we look at that, I'm really proud of that also. There's lots of things physically. The velodrome, what Marion is now doing with the velodrome, I think is pretty special, and that was kind of being held up before, and I think we got that done. So now we have great events out there. I mean, I could point to probably lots of things like that. We did a lot of work in Irvington, as you well know.
And I can tell you all my Castorite friends out in the east side who I don't think vote Republican very often, but they are very praiseworthy of what you. Irvington's the best neighborhood in the city. I'm biased, obviously, but you did spend a lot, and I'll say this very quickly. But Hal has a reunion every year. It's kind of it's exploded because of social media, and it happens in August of 2011. And you were running for your second term, and I texted you, and there were probably 300 or 400 people there, and Howe High School, and I said, come out here, and talk to these folks. And I remember you were busy, but you said, sure, I'll come on out, and you walked around, and I didn't even talk to you. I just left you alone. And
I don't think I could find you, as I recall.
Yeah, all these people, everybody coming up to you, and just not necessarily because but I can hear them saying, thank you. You've been wonderful for Irvington. Love what you're doing for the city. Whether they were R's or D's, I don't know. But you were able to have that connection, specifically on the east side, which would be the part of the town I would know most about. You decided not to run for re-election in 2015, and you wanted to be impactful to the city in other ways. And one thing I want to specifically ask you about, because then I want you to talk for a few minutes about your book, is women in tech. There's a burgeoning tech sector. It's beyond burgeoning now. It's established and it's got deep roots. What made you get involved in that particular aspect of the tech world?
Well, when I was done being the mayor, it took me about 3 or 4 months to clear my head. And Dan Towers of Guggenheim Life out there in Carmel had asked me, I met him through a mutual friend. He said, I want to talk to you about what we can do. And he was gracious enough to let me clear my head because it took a long time. I was all in being the mayor, I think, as everybody knows. He said, what should we do? We want to make a difference here. And I said, well, give me a few weeks. And I went back and talked to a lot of people. And I had this thing in my mind all the time, the tech. There's not enough jobs. When the governor talks about workforce development, he's exactly right. There's not going to be enough people in the future for the jobs that are going to be there. And so tech was a big deal. And there aren't going to be enough men to fill the tech jobs in the world. And so women in tech, it's not just an equity issue. It actually is a numbers issue. There are going to be millions of jobs across the country here in about 10 years that we're not going to be able to fill unless we put more women, young women, going into tech. And so that's why we created what we did we started with sponsoring the State Robotics Championships, which has an emphasis on girls. We did the STEM Days for middle school girls. We provide funding for women to go through coding academies and Ivy Tech IT courses and that sort of thing. So we're able to do all that and really make a difference. And I like to say, we're not an advocacy group. We actually put women in tech.
Right.
And we actually get them jobs. The last 7 that graduated from the coding academy that we help fund got jobs for $70,000.
And
all 7 were all picked up.
And your experience as mayor just reinforced this, like you repeatedly hear.
I was always trying to, pretty much every decision I made was about creating the kind of city that talent wants to move into and where people want to live. And then you have to make sure that talent has a certain skill set that brings in the companies. Tech is going to be big in that regard. And Indianapolis and central Indiana has to be big in that regard. And we need to get more women to go into tech. And that's just the way it is. And if we're going to continue our progress in this sector and STEM, generally speaking, we have to make sure that young women, particularly middle school girls and high school girls, stay focused on STEM because when they're interested in it and go in that direction. So we want to make sure they're interested in that when we move into that so they can move in that direction if they want to. Because as you know, sometimes they get talked out of it. Social pressures come into play, and we don't want that to happen. We want them to go there if that's where they want to go, and we want to provide them the opportunity and the training to do it all. So that's why Indy Women in Tech has been so important. And Dan and the ladies that I work with out there have been terrific.
You've written a book.
I have. I actually just got my first 5 copies a couple days ago. It's called Less Oil or More Caskets, as you well know. I'm always concerned about national security. I'm frankly always concerned about our troops and going into harm's way. And figured out about 6 or 7 years ago that what we're doing with oil in the world, the United States is spending, the last estimate by a group in D.C. was that we're spending $81 billion in this past year to make sure that oil flows throughout the world. The infrastructure and the oil supply routes, and we guard it for the entire world. We do that. The funny thing is, how are the terrorists funded? How is Iran? How is ISIS and Al-Qaeda funded? Primarily through the sale of oil. And so this is kind of a perverse situation that we have going on, which is we're protecting all these supply routes so that oil gets into these countries who then fund terrorism. So countries and organizations. So it's when I was in the Gulf War in '91, which is completely about oil, it couldn't do anything about it. Everybody knew that was the situation. But until about 5, 6, 7 years ago, when the new technology comes out with transportation, we have to look at this because 70% of the world's oil is used for transportation. 70%. What if we didn't use gasoline and diesel in our cars and trucks? What difference would that make? It'd make a big difference. And what upsets me is we seem to be fighting this when we should be kind of sprinting toward it. Because it's our troops that are over there. We've spent, according to a Brown University study, $5 trillion in the last few decades over there. Of course, we lost thousands of lives. Again, that was what was needed at the time. But now we have to look at it going into the future, and that's really what we're doing. And the problem is people think energy independence is really important now. But when you ask that next level question, why is that? You just get a blank stare. It does keep the money in the country. That's true. But the fact is that does not stop hundreds of billions of dollars going from Asia to the Middle East every year. 2/3 of the oil that comes out of the Middle East goes to Asia. So our energy independence is irrelevant because that money will continue to go in there. And of course, who protects the oil supply routes for all this to happen? Mm-hmm. We do. And we've been over there for over 40 years now, since we took over from the British in the early 70s. We protect that for everybody. This is the situation that people don't know. And everybody thinks that the U.S. has a lot of oil. We don't have any oil. We got 2 to 3% of the oil reserves in the world at the most. We can up our production, which is what we've done right now. But the fact is everybody else is just sitting back saying, go ahead, because we've got all the oil.
Right.
80% of the world's oil is in the hands of dictators, of authoritarian countries. 80%. So they don't really care if we produce our own oil or not because they're just sitting back saying, go ahead, we've got our own oil.
And that's the point of your book, is that the role of the United States is promoting, perversely, perhaps.
Yeah, I think perversely is a good word. I hate to say it like that, but it's we're promoting that, but we're the ones responsible for the oil supply. It's not our oil, but we're the ones protecting it all. And it's our troops that pay the price. It's our taxpayer that pays the dollars. And we have to look at this going forward. I'm not complaining about what's happened in the past or anything like that. What I'm saying is that we now have a new technology that allows us to change this dynamic because 70% of the world's oil is used for transportation. We should be going toward that dynamic. I think this is what I always say, our transportation energy policy should focus on these things, which is defund the terrorists, stop the enormous strategic leverage that oil-rich nations have over oil-dependent nations. And the third thing is bring our troops home, because our troops are going to stay over there as long as oil is a necessary strategic commodity. We need to get oil to not be a necessary strategic commodity for economies. And once we do that, lots of things change in the world. Most of it, in my opinion, is our troops come home and we stop fighting over there in the Middle East.
Well, with your career in the Marine Corps, you understand better than most. My son did 2 tours in Afghanistan, and we all know why he was there.
Yeah.
Are you doing a book tour? Are you doing some speaking engagements or things in Indianapolis? Or I know you're just out in Washington, D.C.
All of the above. We're going to do some things in Washington, D.C. at the end of January. The book officially comes out January 1st. You can buy it now. Less Oil and More Caskets. It's called Less Oil and More Caskets, the National Security Argument for Moving Away from Oil. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's on Walmart. It's Costco. It's on all. Everybody has the book already. But you won't get it until January if you order it now. But go ahead and order it if you want to. I appreciate it if they do that, because it's a quick read. It's not a long read. I never write a long. I like to read big books, but I like to write short books, as you know. So this is my second book. And it's an easy read. And it's full of facts. And I tell you, the facts are in there. And the facts are from people like the Energy Information Administration. And I mean, they're just, people don't know it. I just put the puzzle together, as I like to say. So. But we're going to tour as much as possible. We're going to get to the local TV stations as much as possible. Like I say, D.C. We're going to do some things in Indianapolis, at the University of Indianapolis, where I'm at also. I work down there also, and so they're going to do some things. And so we're going to try to make it as big a hit as possible.
Thank you very much. We have one last segment, which I'm hoping to use for all of my guests in this Leaders and Legends podcast that we're inaugurating here today. So. Copying off of Mr. Lipton some forth from inside the actor's studio. So I'm going to ask, my goal is to ask the same 5 questions of everyone whom I get to interview.
Is this the lightning round?
It's kind of the lightning round, but feel free to take some time for a thoughtful answer, because some of these things you may have to go, oh, shoot, I don't remember. So you ready?
Okay.
Who did you see at your first concert?
Sly and the Family Stone.
Where was that?
IU.
That's good.
You didn't expect that, did you?
No, not at all, actually. What was your first car?
66 white Volkswagen.
Did you get in high school?
A Bug. Yeah. No, college.
College?
Yeah. It wasn't new.
Oh, yeah. Because you graduated from college in 78?
Well, I was supposed to leave in 76, but yes, I left in 78.
You remember fraternity, correct?
Yes, I was.
Okay, that explains that.
Well, most got out of there on time. I was having fun, ran out of money, all that stuff. It's okay.
If you could have dinner with anyone in the world, who would you choose? Other than Mrs. Ballard.
And I always said to you and others, I'm not really into celebrity culture very much. So,
it doesn't have to be a celebrity. It could be Chris Spangle. It could be me.
It's kind of funny, because when I became the mayor, everybody asked me, who do you want to meet? What do you want to do this? And I kept saying, I don't know. I'm not in the celebrity culture. And I remember telling you the 2 people I really wanted to meet was Jim Morris and Colin Powell.
That's right.
And Jim Morris is now a friend.
That's right.
And so those were the 2 people I most wanted to meet, because Jim headed up the World Food Program. And Colin Powell, I just thought, was the one guy, well, 2 now with Mitch, that should have been president. So, but
well, you've already had dinner with Jim Morris, I'm assuming. So
and Colin Powell.
And Colin
Powell. I introduced him at the Butler Speaking Series, and I sat next to him for dinner for 2 hours.
Oh, that's terrific.
So yeah, it was great. It was great. He was a wonderful guy. But I'm thinking somebody around the world. But the people I really like to have dinner with are dead.
Like
Winston Churchill.
Oh, okay. So no one, you can't think of anyone.
Mother Teresa.
You couldn't think of anyone currently. Your favorite football player was Raymond Berry. You want to choose Raymond Berry?
I met Raymond Berry.
I remember
here
that.
at a Colts game. God, I may have to come back to that. I don't know.
Okay. If you could recommend one book to anyone, what would you recommend? Which book? Like, you have to read this book, or your life will be changed by reading this book. You can say your own book, by the way.
Well, everybody will read my book because it's great. I've read a lot of really good books. And I still am. What was it's a long book and people probably won't read it, but one, I'll give you two. Freakonomics was a really neat way of looking at things, so I think Freakonomics is good. But the Ayn Rand book, Atlas Shrugged.
Really?
Yeah.
Because that's kind of a book, a popular book among conservative folks. I haven't read it.
It is, but it says it in a different way. I mean, it's a huge book, and I like to read huge books. Excuse me, but it's really good.
Last one before we go back to the dinner one.
All right.
If you could have witnessed any event in history, which one would you want to witness?
Wow.
This is a smart show. You know, you can't just mail it in. You got to think. I went to 4 IPS schools. I mean, I should be able to get something out of this.
It took you 4 schools to get there. Okay.
Well, they kept closing them.
Yeah. I think the signing of the documents at the end of World War II on that ship.
On the USS Missouri?
On the Missouri, yeah.
Just because the end of the war, who was there, the power of what it meant?
All of the above. It was really well, I know what my next book is. I'll put it that way already. But I think that was which is called Losing the Peace, which is I want to do an analysis of all the documents that were signed at the end of World War I, which I think led to another century of warfare and still to this day.
Especially in the Middle East.
Yeah, no question. But I think that was the end of the World War II on the Missouri was who was there, obviously, but stunning ceremony, especially when General Wainwright was there. That's pretty moving. And
for those, General Wainwright was surrendered and was part of the was Corregidor or something, but was spent the whole battalion, but spent the entire war as a POW and lost an immense amount of weight.
Yeah, he was just sticks and bones, and
and held it together until MacArthur called him by his personal nickname, which was Jim. Yeah. So Wainwright's best friends called him Jim, even though his name was Jonathan. Right. And he held his emotions in check. And MacArthur had him staying right behind him at the ceremony and called him Jim. And Wainwright, this man, 2-star general, I think at the time, maybe 3-star, all these years in a prison of war camp, started crying.
Yeah.
Terrific. That's an amazing ceremony. So you got about 10 seconds to decide on dinner.
Well, I'm going to go with a good one then. Just my wife. You know, we just love being with each other. I'll just say that.
How many years?
35 now.
Good. And you produced 2 of the absolute best kids I've ever met in my entire life.
Terrific kids. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Ballard, Colonel Ballard, for joining us on the very first Leaders and Legends podcast. We enjoyed the conversation immensely, and I will circulate this to all of your friends and family and former associates of the administration. And when you get your next book written or you want to come talk again, please do.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much, Robert.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for listening to Leaders and Legends, brought to you by Veteran Strategies Incorporated. If you want to contact us about this program or our menu of public relations services, please send us an email at robert@veteranstrategies.com. That's robert@veteranstrategies.com.